U.S. politicians want to know whether American troops tortured prisoners in Yemen. The U.S. House of Representatives has voted to require the defense secretary to find out. Hundreds of Yemenis are reported to have disappeared into a secret network of prisons run by the United Arab Emirates as troops searched for al-Qaeda fighters. American officials acknowledge the interrogation of suspects but deny human rights abuses. Rob Reynolds has more from Washington.
The Associated Press news agency was the first to uncover the existence of a network of secret prisons in Yemen run by the United Arab Emirates in a report published last year. The 18 secret prisons reportedly have as many as 2,000 prisoners, and those prisoners have been subjected to a variety of brutal tortures, including electric shocks, beatings, burning, and sexual abuse. Those findings were largely confirmed by a special panel of experts appointed by the UN. Now, this legislation passed by the House is part of a much larger Defense Department budget bill. It would have to go to the Senate to be then sent on to President Trump for his signature to become law. The Senate just recently voted to approve Gina Haspel as director of the CIA. Ms. Haspel was allegedly involved in activities including torture at U.S. black site prisons in earlier years. Now, according to U.S. law, it is illegal for U.S. personnel to be involved in torture. However, those protections are much less stringent when it comes to surrogates or U.S. allies actually carrying out the brutal acts. The U.S. has been supporting the UAE and Saudi Arabia in their battle against Houthi rebels in Yemen for about the past 3 years.
Let's speak to Andreas Krieg. He's an assistant professor at the Defense Studies Department at King's College London. He's joining us via Skype. How significant is this congressional vote?
It is significant in that the American public needs to know what the role of the United States troops in that area is at the moment, because nobody really knows. On the other hand, in terms of bringing an end to what is going on these black sites, I mean, there's been a lot of evidence coming out over the last year suggesting that there are a range of different surrogates operating in these prisons. So the U.S. is not directly involved in actually setting up or running these black sites, because black sites have been somewhat made illegal after 2009. But what the U.S. has done, they've basically externalized this to surrogates, mostly the United Arab Emirates, but even the United Arab Emirates have now again externalized this burden to local groups that they're cooperating with. So the control and oversight, as well as the attribution to the U.S. directly or indirectly, will be very, very difficult. So even if there is there will be some sort of evidence that the U.S. has taken some of that evidence, some of that interrogation that came out of the interrogation, it wouldn't directly mean that the U.S. can do anything about it. I think.
So are you saying that an investigation and this congressional vote would not really reveal the exact role that U.S. military personnel have played in these interrogations?
It's very difficult to determine, because I think what is at the most what the U.S. would be involved in was probably be part of the interrogation process. So there might be interrogators there who are part of the U.S. government or a U.S. government organization such as the CIA. This has happened in the past, which is also illegal, but this still wouldn't mean that the U.S. has any control of what happens to detainees while they're in prison and what happens to them before and after interrogation. I think there is another aspect that U.S. troops might be involved in actually capturing and detaining individuals and then bringing them to the black sites, which makes it problematic. But what is also problematic, and I think which is more likely, the most likely, is that the U.S. has taken the intelligence gathered by the UAE and use it for their own intelligence handling and processing, and that in itself is also a violation of U.S. law, international law, and the Torture Convention.
In the fog of a war, how difficult is it to assess the actual level of control that U.S. personnel have in these UAE-run prisons?
Very, very difficult. So even if we had a good team on the ground that would be able to conduct this kind of investigation, it would be very difficult to unravel what's actually going on. I think even the Pentagon itself doesn't have full oversight of what people are involved in, because there are different U.S. agencies on the ground in Yemen. There's CIA operations are completely separate from Pentagon operations. And when it comes to these kind of black sites, we've seen that in the past where the US actually set them up and managed them all across the world. Nobody was really held to account for this. And as you said, the CIA director, the new one, was involved in this kind of black site operations before. We have Pompeo, who publicly was now the Secretary of State, who publicly came out endorsing torture. And you have a president who's endorsing torture. All of these people in very high senior roles actually are very much embracing this kind of operation. It's very hard to determine whether then the US would go 150% in and try to investigate what's actually going on.
All right, Andreas Krieg, we thank you for speaking to us from London.
Thank you.